August 20, 1969, tragedy in Darien, Connecticut, as two Penn Central commuter trains collide. At about 8:20 p.m. on August 20th, 1969, two Penn Central commuter trains collided head-on just north of the Hoyt Street crossing on the Canaan Branch near Darien, Connecticut. The cars involved in the accident were of the type shown in this photograph, which were popularly called washboards due to their appearance. Today, the Canaan Branch is single track for its entire length, but in 1969, there was a passing siding between Camp Avenue and Hoyt Street called Dale. As we shall see from the NTSB report, the failure of one of the trains to stop at the siding was the immediate cause of the accident. The two trains involved in the accident were designated N48 and N49. Train N48, going from Stamford to New Canaan, had a three-man crew and about 60 to 80 passengers. The first car in train N48 had been closed to revenue passengers before it left Stamford. Train N49, a deadhead equipment train from New Canaan to Stamford, had a three-man crew and was carrying a car inspector and an electrician who had performed service at New Canaan and were returning to Stamford, still on duty. The conductor and brakeman of train N48 began their tour of duty at 2 p.m. on August 20, 1969 at Stamford. Their assignment was on a train to Grand Central Terminal, New York City, and then on train number 334 to New Canaan, arriving there at 6:43 p.m. They were then assigned to train N47, scheduled to depart from New Canaan at 7:29 p.m. The engineer of train N48 began his tour of duty on August 20th at 6:29 p.m., and after he arrived at New Canaan on train N44, he was assigned to N47. The crew of N47 was also assigned to be the crew of N48 between Stamford and New Canaan. The engineer of N49 was first assigned on August 20th to train number 334 from New York City to New Canaan. His next assignment after his arrival at New Canaan was on train N49. The conductor and brakeman of N49 went on duty at Stamford at 1:15 p.m., and after several round trips between Stamford and New Canaan, arrived at New Canaan on train N44. Their next assignment was on train N49. The rest and hours of service of the employees on both trains N48 and N49, and of those in the Stamford and New Canaan control stations, met the requirements of the hours of service law for their tours. Let's backtrack for a moment and see how train number N44 became train N47 and set the stage for this accident. Train number 88, operating from Grand Central to New Haven, was delayed and arrived at Stamford at 7:26 p.m., 33 minutes late. The Stamford to New Canaan train N44 was scheduled to connect with train number 88 at Stamford, so N44 was held for the arrival of 88. Train N44 departs from Stamford at 7:30 p.m., arriving at New Canaan at 7:50 p.m., 31 minutes late. N44 now becomes N47. The late arrival of N44 delayed the departure of N47 from New Canaan. N47 departs from New Canaan at 7:53 p.m. and proceeds to Stamford and arrives there at 8:06 p.m., 21 minutes late. N47 is now designated N48 and is scheduled to head back to New Canaan. Meanwhile, train number N49 was supposed to have departed from New Canaan at 7:48 p.m. and should have arrived at Stamford at 8:04 p.m., but the schedule is now very late. Rather than cause further delays, the dispatcher feels that it is best for the trains to pass each other at Dale Siding. Dale Siding only has room for 3 cars, so N48 is a 3-car shuttle heading north to New Canaan, and it will take the siding and wait for train N49 to pass southbound because N49 has 9 cars. Train order number 29 is issued to both crews with these instructions. Well, that was what was supposed to happen. Instead, train number N48 continued past the siding, heading north, colliding head-on into train number N49. The 2 trains were operating at approximately 30 miles an hour at the time of the collision. Averting a greater tragedy was the fact that the first car of train number N48 was closed to the public since there were not enough passengers on the train to warrant opening another car. The leading car of N49 passed through the superstructure of the leading car of N48. Almost 1/2 of the first car of train N48 was destroyed. The underframe of the first car of N48 was broken off at the body bolster, or at a point about 13 feet from the end of the car. The engineer's compartment on the front platform of the end of the car was completely destroyed, and this entire section of the car was forced approximately 20 feet to the rear. The underframe of the second car of N48 buckled and was moderately damaged. The third car was slightly damaged. The forward portion of the leading car of N49, including the engineer's compartment, was destroyed. The destroyed area extended back into the car about 1/4 of its length, which included several rows of seats. Of the remaining 8 cars on N49, 5 had moderate underframe damage and 3 were slightly damaged. The engineer of train N48 and a passenger who was riding in the first car but unauthorized were killed. The conductor was seriously injured and admitted to the hospital. The flagman and about 43 passengers were injured. None, however, were admitted to a hospital. On train N49, both the engineer who was in the control compartment and the conductor who was on the front platform saw that the collision was inevitable. Both employees entered the car and ran towards the rear, but the collision occurred when they were still in the forward position and were trapped in the wreckage. The conductor was killed, and the engineer was seriously injured. The NTSB report highlights 23 points, but here are the key findings. Train order number 29 was properly issued by the dispatcher to the train crews. Train order 29 and clearance form A were delivered to the engineer but were not delivered to the conductor of train 48 at Stamford as required by rule. The train order signal at Stamford Tower was not displayed, but it was decided that the failure to display the signal was not a factor in the accident, but could cause confusion between employees. The engineer of train N48 failed to obey train order 29. The conductor of train N48 failed to obtain copies of the train order, did not properly instruct the flagman, and did not communicate with the engineer. If the conductor had been fully aware of the train order, he might have been able to pull the emergency brake. The crew of train N49 was operating in accordance with the rules, and they decided there was absolutely nothing they could have done to avert the accident, considering that they were approaching a curve and that vegetation obscured their view.
Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to this channel.